Good evening, and thank you to Dun & Bradstreet for having us here. This is the last panel discussion, but I promise that this would be the most interesting, so I'll beg for that. I had the opportunity to have an icebreaker with this wonderful panel that we have here, and the thoughts, the ideas, the leadership around sustainability here is something that must be witnessed and heard by this room. And why are we discussing sustainability within the MSME space? Because both are very important. If you hear the numbers, 30% of India's GDP is contributed by MSMEs, 40% of our exports come from MSMEs, 11 crore jobs are actually done through MSMEs, and they contribute to a large number of our workforce being employed both in the rural and urban India. If you see the statistics of the Department of MSME, 49% of MSMEs are based in urban areas and 51 in rural areas. So actually there's a skew towards rural India. So as India grows, as Bharat grows, it'll be important for MSMEs to become more and more sustainable. And why do they have to become more sustainable? Because India has a very ambitious target set for itself. By 2070, our Prime Minister has endorsed India's net zero commitment. We are looking at reducing our energy intensity by 45% by 2030. 50% of all our energy needs will come through renewables. These are massive targets, and it needs not just the government's efforts or monies, but actually the will of India Inc. to come forth and actually do this. So you can see the correlation between the importance of sustainability and the role that MSMEs will have to play in it. India's sustainability agenda is not possible without MSMEs, and MSMEs of tomorrow will not exist if they're not sustainable. So these are the interlocking issues that we intend to discuss with this power-packed panel, and just by design, it is sort of men versus women on this side, but it was not intended to be like that. And I'd first want to bring in, the discussion really needs to revolve around why do we need sustainability in the first place? And I'd like to bring Rachana into this. Rachana, what is the importance of sustainability for India Inc.? We'll get to MSMEs, but overall, can you give us your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Karan. This is, in fact, a very, very interesting topic, a topic very close to my heart. As we say, if you have to predict the future, you have to create it. And I think we are in that cusp of creation, and this is the time for us to be able to do something concrete. Two things that I would want to bring in here. One, sustainability helps future-proofing in terms of our businesses, in terms of our existence, in terms of our resources. And I think it's high time we do that. Second, most of our customers or consumers now are informed consumers, and this is not something it is out of choice, but they are demanding it. Whether it's consumers, whether it's our investors, whether our employees, I think all of our stakeholders are really, really wanting this. You see the new generation of all of our kids believe in this more than any of us. I think as we grew up, this was a choice, but I think as we will grow more and more, it is becoming our responsibility and not a choice anymore, not an option anymore. So sustainability is something that I would say will help us create the future and predict it.
So you're talking about future-proofing, and sustainability can play a role in that. You're talking about changing consumer behavior, but within the organization itself, and I'm sure when you speak to peers, what has been the uptake? What is the outlook towards sustainability as a mantra for your existence?
Yeah, so I represent a life sciences company called Bayer, and globally our CEO is also the Chief Sustainability Officer, which means it's driven from the CEO, it's on the CEO's agenda. The second is the remuneration of the top management is linked directly to sustainability targets. All the three businesses that we have, one is the agri-sciences, second is pharma, and the third consumer health. We have stringent targets laid down for all the three businesses, apart from resourcing, water, gender smart work that we do. For example, we talk about reaching out to 100 million smallholder farmers in low and medium income countries across the world by 2030. reaching out to 100 million women in low and medium income countries with family planning and contraceptive solutions. And similarly for self-care and consumer health as well. So I think it is important, and we've realized that sustainability needs to be driven from the top. It has to be linked to the remuneration and incentives. And third, it has to have targets for it to be driven.
Right. So two broad themes there. One is the need to embed it and how you can action it. I think very beautifully put there by Rachana on how they are doing it within their organization. But the regulatory landscape has changed. It's not just about the large organizations anymore. Many of you might have come across the SEBI guidelines, which now speak about the business responsibility and sustainability report, the BRSR reporting, to be expanded now to the top 1,000 companies, which in effect actually becomes that every company would need to start disclosing more and more on sustainability. Sankar, I'd like to bring you in here. We spoke about the MNC experience, as it were, and the brilliant embedding that they've done, where the CEO is actually the CSO as well. But what about MSMEs? I mean, you see this both from your research, your analytics, and the rating side. There is a bit of hesitance towards moving towards sustainability. How do you lean into sustainability if you're an MSME?
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. I have, a little split up in my perception about how MSMEs are adopting ESG. On one end, I think the common perception that we come across is that MSMEs are still lukewarm to the idea of adopting ESG, and probably the awareness building has not yet happened, and probably they don't know what they can do or what they have to do. But given my 29 years of experience in credit rating space, I also have another view. I believe that our MSMEs are extremely ESG conscious. It is just that they did not know the acronym, they did not call it sustainability, but India is a very challenging country to business, extremely highly populated. You want to set up a small plant, you have to face issues of land acquisition. You have almost all resources, which is scarce on a per capita basis. So to build a business and to succeed here, you have to be efficient. And efficiency is at the core of the concept of sustainability. We are calling it by the name of ESG. Tomorrow we will call it by some other name. But I firmly believe that eventually the concept of ESG will be successful when we will link it to two things: survival and cost. When sustainability will mean better cost structures for the companies, companies will automatically adopt it. If you force down their throat a solution which is more expensive, I would not consider that it is ESG, or I would not consider it as sustainable. So there will be innovations that will happen. There will be new alternatives that will come. Today, I'm not sure if we can call solar power a sustainable alternative to coal. And therefore, adoption of solar power will face a lot of difficulty. There will be a day when technology and finance interventions will make solar power cheaper than coal. And I don't think there would be any MSME in India who will say that I will not adopt it. And it goes on for each aspect of ESG, because all these aspects are ultimately linked to their cost. And as far as survival, it's the most important word in the life of a CEO. Today, in terms of financial forecasting and financial modeling, everything beyond 2 years or 3 years is nebulous. However much you are long-sighted, you will still not be able to predict what is likely to happen to your business 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line. So how do you assure your investors that I'm going to be here doing business and as a custodian of your money, I will be still standing after 20 years. For that, sustainability provides a very, very good benchmark. And I think a lot of unknown SMEs in the country are extremely good at being sustainable. So I would...
Right. So that's heartening news, that it is, we may change acronyms, we may, put on new clothes around it, but at the core of it is efficiency, is survival, as you put it, and it is also an orientation towards savings and being as lean as possible. For the uninitiated, the ESG is environment, social and governance standards, and there are multiple frameworks that are out there now, and it is now expected on companies to have specific programs and then make disclosures in the interest of transparency. So thanks for those insights, and I'll come back to you with a few more that I'm sure the audience would want. Yogesh, I'd like to bring you in here. Yogesh, I mean, Tata projects, you run these massive projects across the country, and a lot of new India is being built in New Delhi, thanks to the work and the work done by the Shramjeevis there. And for you, I'm sure, apart from the environment, the S aspect is also very critical, and that's the social aspect, the human dimension of both impacts and what you do. But I mean, for you, you're dealing with an entire value chain, which has big players, MNCs, right down to very small contractors. How do you devise a plan that works for all your entire value chain, number one? And number two, when you're talking to your suppliers, and they may be in the MSME space, what is it that you're hearing and how can you help them?
Thanks. So from the perspective of the construction industry or the EPC industry, I will share that the materiality changes industry by industry. For us, the highest materiality in the space of ESG is, what you exactly said, is social. But if we drill down, it is occupational health and safety for the workers. So we have around 80,000 workers, around 1,000 engineers working right now. So occupational health and safety becomes one of our key material issues for us. And we have process systems in place to engage people and for that. So in terms of MSEs, where we have partners in place, we make sure that we have a very strong engagement with them in terms of contractual engagement. At the same time, an engagement which is a hand-holding engagement, so that we handhold them and takes them towards the way we wanted to lead the organization in. So they become parts and parcel for us. Things what we are not able to do directly, we take the help of theirs. So that is one space. Second space, I would say, is towards green vendor development. And I would say that way we have a process in place for the green vendor development. We see that how the organization is getting engaged into the ESG space. And are they able to get the return on investment, what they're putting into sustainability piece. Just giving you an example, say for example, alternate material is one example. If you are able to displace, say, sand, which is a natural sand with a manufactured sand, that's one piece of alternate material which comes in from the domain of environment. And if we are able to engage our partners to do that, not only with us, with any other partners, I think that's the way forward for that. Thank you.
Right. So you're looking at substitution, you're actually looking at gentle nudges. Is there more prescriptive things that you're now doing? Because with the new BRSR core assurance, you're actually having to bring in the value chain. So are you now talking to your vendors and saying, look, if you don't do this or don't meet this regulatory standard, we might have to let you go? What is the thinking from a group as big as yours?
So we have two things in place here. One is about taking those vendors who are actually doing something onto this. So we have a supply chain management rating piece through which we identify that which vendor is at what maturity of their sustainability and how they can help us. So that's one way. And for the existing vendors, we have programs in place so that we engage with them and move them in terms of the way we wanted to move.
Right. So the message that I'm hearing is that, if you want to be associated with Tata projects, they are willing to help you, they're willing to be equal partners, but the suppliers, the vendors, the MSMEs working with them will also now need to get onto this value chain of ESG. So that's the change that has happened, and I'm glad to hear that it is a two-way process rather than just a change in the rate contract and saying you'll have to sign up to that. Naveen, I'd like to bring you in. I mean, we heard from the construction industry. The steel and cement industry is both a big in the eyes of ratings agencies, it is seen as a big risk. But you're also working in aspirational districts. You're working in economically backward parts of India because of, various resources being available there. What is your experience in terms of ESG for those MSMEs when you partner with them?
So thanks. Our industry is a hard-to-abate sector. We contribute close to 7 to 8% of global greenhouse emissions. So it becomes very pertinent for us to really work on this, not on the social and governance point of view, but from the environmental point of view, because to us, that comes number one. So there are a couple of policies like I'm pleased to inform you that, we have envisaged this thing, and we believe that the best thing that can be created is to use your local resources. So in 2008, we envisaged that it is always better to use the Swadeshi coal than importing coking coal. So we put in the world's largest coal gasification based DRI plant in our Angul, Odisha factory. That was envisaged in 2007, and we commissioned this plant in 2014. And it is up and running, and which is saving so much of forex. So that is one. Second, in terms of the optimization of the manufacturing process, that is also very important. So what we have envisaged that the CO2 that is coming out from our facilities, we are already capturing it. So we are capturing more than 3,000 tons of CO2 per day, which is maximum, which is the largest plant in the world. And now we are trying to utilize that how we can use this CO2 into different chemicals, or to use this CO2, putting back this CO2 into the mines to bring in the circularity, or to use this CO2 to make more crude algae oil, which can be again used to make sustainable aviation fuel. So I think it is more of the circularity that we'll trying to bring in our operation, because that take the least of the effort, right? That is one. Second is on the digitalization. That yes, with the operation excellence and digitalization, how we can improve our efficiencies, how we can improve our productivity. Because these are the low-hanging fruit. We don't have to put in extra money. We don't have to put in extra capital into it. It is just the efficiency point of view, how we can, and to our surprise, we came to understand that we can add 10 to 15% of the value through these low-hanging fruits. On the social part of it, I think on the supplier, the overall supply chain part of it, we believe this China plus one policy that has come in, I think it has really come in a big way for a country like ours. I think
So China plus one being where the world is now looking at another alternative to China for manufacturing.
Exactly. So we are promoting this localization of our supplier partners, how we can bring in more suppliers in the vicinity of our plant, how we can try to get in the same Toyota production system wherein you have the central hub of manufacturing and all your supplier partners, the MSC guys, are within 100-kilometer radius of or 50-kilometer radius of our plant. I think in that we work really well, and I'm pleased to inform you that we started putting in the efforts where we started localizing our supplier partners in the area where we are operating in 2019, and by 2020, close to 50 to 60% of our supplier partner we tried to bring in near to our plant, and it really helped us navigating the toughest of the period that we saw in the COVID time. We are the only company which posted for 2 consecutive quarters, posted a positive growth of 12%, where the other companies were negative. This was one of the main factors which really played in our favor. So I think these are the few examples which we are capitalizing on, improving on, and I think we have a huge responsibility because we are hard to abate, and I think we are leading that example. And just for the information of the audience, we have our operating plant, world's most efficient natural gas-based plant in Oman, and we are putting a world's largest green hydrogen-ready steel plant in Oman in Duqm. And the renewable energy is going to come from solar, wind. There will be a pump hydro that will ensure the round-the-clock power, and for that, from these resources, we are going to make green steel, and the green steel the color is not being changed, but what is being changed is the carbon intensity. In the normal conventional steel making process, we emit 2.5 tons of CO2 per ton of steel. But with this process of green steel, we are going to emit only 400 kgs. So you are bringing down your carbon intensity from 2.5 kgs to 500 kgs. So you are reducing the carbon intensity by close to 85-90%. And it is not that this efforts will go waste. There is so much of demand of green steel that is coming up in Europe, right? These guys have their target. By 2035, they need to carbonize. They want to achieve the net zero. And scope 1 and scope 2, it is easy to, you can easily close this. But scope 3 is where the maximum effort has to. And these guys are taking, and we see a huge demand of green steel from Europe. And I'm also pleased to inform you that we have already signed MOUs close to 1 million ton out of 5 million ton within three months. So I think the times are amazing, and I think a good opportunity. And for us, I think it's the best time where we start working in basically trying to reduce the carbon intensity, because this is the future. We have to live a better future for our future generation.
Right. So we heard CCUS, we heard green hydrogen, we heard green steel. These are real things now. I mean, this is not really sustainability in the boardroom discussion or something which is, on the drawing board. This is actually happening. But what was also very interesting in your comments was about resiliency, with the supply chain resiliency that you're building with the MSMEs. So both the incentive for large corporations to have the supply chain resilience built in, especially post-COVID, and also the incentive for MSMEs to partner with you. Benita, I'd like to bring you in. You heard the experience of what Indian players are doing. You have global operations, which means global compliances, global standards. In Europe, there's now talk of a carbon tax for anything that you're going to be importing from outside of the EU, and a changing landscape. When you look at the Indian market, you're working with multiple MSMEs, you're engaged with vendors and partners. What do you see as some of the challenges that they're facing, and what is the landscape changing like? I mean, when you talk to them about compliances, do they come back to you saying that they're much more open to it, or do they find it difficult? Are MSMEs investing in sustainability?
Yeah. So thanks for that question. I think when we look at our own customers, I think we see a huge evolution over the last many years. So when we started off, compliance was something that people would come to only for their export consignments. So whenever people wanted to export something, they would come to us and they would buy from us because we could give them the certificates that were required for them to be compliant. So that was the starting point. But now things have really changed. At least over the last 5 years, we see a gradual, in fact, it has been quite rapid, where people have started looking at compliance, and companies within India itself are demanding compliance from their vendors, and therefore our customers come back to us because we do printing inks. So we produce inks which are used in packaging. So now packaging is touching each of our lives. But actually for all of these years, nobody ever bothered about what is the quality of the ink which was being used. Because these inks actually get into the food that you're eating. There's migration which is happening, but nobody really bothered too much about it. Europe had banned a lot of chemicals long back, and therefore people who were exporting to the Europe or to the USA, they would be the ones who would be complying. But nobody else was using good inks, So there was the playing field was never level in that sense. And it was always at an expensive price. So as mentioned earlier, there was always a cost of compliance which was much, much higher. But now eventually what happened was that now we see that we also proactively took the steps where we said that we would produce the same material which we are doing worldwide. We would do that in India. So we are not going to give differing standards. So that was a huge changing point for us also, because that, to us, then that made that the basic standard. So we said if health is at risk, we will not produce any products which are actually harmful. So that actually changed things. We suffered for a while because we were more expensive, but eventually now as we see it, now this has become the new normal. And the industry has now moved to a standard where everybody is demanding better standards. And I think that's the way in which we've seen sustainability also grow. So, so one is the health part of the standards that we see. The other side we see is when you're looking at recyclability, etc. So when plastic waste management rules came for the first time, people were very reluctant and very few people really were complying. But now it has become a way of life, right? So almost everyone has to comply. Everyone has to be actually listed. So the things have changed again. And then now companies are coming back and asking for recycled content to be part of their packaging. So therefore, the quality standards which are demanded are totally different. So sustainability has become a way of life rather than something that you had to, put in and just check few boxes, or it was a pilot project which was being run by 3 people in the company. So that has completely changed. So I think that's the journey that we are seeing. And this is happening in every industry, I would say. I would say FMCG companies are seeing it. We are seeing it as a B2B supplier. The other people who are producing plastics, they are seeing it. Everybody in the entire ecosystem is seeing it. And I think that's the way it will actually percolate and it would move forward.
Right. So that's an important point there about it percolating down. So Rachana, could you talk to us about the opportunities that sustainability presents to both, say, for example, your value chain, since you're working in life sciences, agri-tech, etc., chemicals, for MSMEs particularly? What are the opportunities that emerge out of this entire sustainability piece?
Yeah, and a great question here. And we, agri sector, we work a lot with FPOs, the Farmer Producer Organization. It is absolutely fantastic to see the type of consciousness that most of the smaller businesses have. And I think I agree to Shankar's point when he says that, it's not like they are not conscious or they don't want to do it, but the main challenge is the capital cost of sustainable solutions. If they do not make business sense, then I think it's difficult for smaller organizations to pick it up. But I think the consciousness, the effort is definitely there. The 2 things that I want to bring in here is, one, it means a lot of collaboration is needed. And going forward, I do see this a lot in terms of collaborating with partners, because not everybody will be, we can't combat climate change individually as organizations or individuals, right? We do need to partner with each other, particularly on the supply chain side, whether it's on the forward side or in the backward side, right? Both integrations are important, I think, in the industry and beyond the sector as well, right? We get to work with people from beyond the sectors, and I think that's important. When we talk about plastic waste management, I think it could be different sectors, different companies coming together to combat this. What is waste for one company could be, an input for somebody else, right? That's one. Second, I also see that today we're talking about carbon neutral. Going forward, I see companies are going to talk about carbon positive. I think that's where it's a huge opportunity for all of us, including smaller organizations or MSMEs, I would say. So these are 2 things I would really call that out.
Right. So, and would you also say, in the spirit of SDG 17, where we are talking about partnerships, you're also looking at, say, knowledge transfer or collaborations with best practices, yeah, so that the MSME value chain can also adopt these and sort of serve you better in that sense?
Absolutely. In fact, giving an example, we have, as Bayer, we support building agri-entrepreneurs. So at the moment, we almost have 1,800 agri-entrepreneurs in the rural, in villages. Not all of them will be in the most rural areas, but in the villages, who cater to around 17 or 18 villages in and around. And these agri-entrepreneurs are people who started off as maybe sons or daughters of farmers, but they are educated and they really don't want to get into just farming. So they collaborate with us and other companies like microfinancing or banking organizations, or even CSC. Some of the CSC units have become BLF centers. And this is a great partnership with smaller, organizations or individual entrepreneurs. And out of those 1,800, around 200 of them are women agri-entrepreneurs. So I think that's a fantastic way of partnering and collaborating, best practice sharing. and integration.
Right, so helping reduce inequalities as well in the process of
Absolutely, yeah.
that's wonderful to know. So a lot of living examples of what is happening around sustainability. But now let me play the devil's advocate. Shankar, I'd like to bring you in here. Let me argue on the other side that these are all Western constructs. This is the way of Western capitalism getting back at Indian industries, which is doing very well, or industries of the developing world. These compliances are actually costs, and they are doing this to sort of get us out of the value chain. If I were an MSME, how would you sort of address that sentiment, which may not be large, but it is a prevailing sentiment also, that this is an increase in cost of doing business, and B, this is just another way of keeping us down?
I cannot say that you are entirely wrong. I think with every, India is the biggest innovator in the world for last 5,000 years. Many concepts we have created, classically the concept of zero created by us, and it has gone out and came back to us. So ESG is something very similar. You know, we are fundamentally very, very frugal country. Like, look at the cars that we drive. You know, if a car is not economical, however expensive it is, or whatever, however glamorous it is, I think it doesn't find a favor in India. You know, compared to some of the other countries where mileage is not a question at all. So, in that kind of a scenario, sometimes when these concepts come from abroad, we lose the perspective, and we sometimes think that, you know, the other countries are doing it better than us, but I don't think that's the case. A classic example is that when I started the ESG rating company, India's first ESG rating company, ESGrisk.ai, we went and met a lot of bankers and mutual funds in India, and this is about 3.5 years back. I called it a consultation process before I could secure funding and other stuff. Everybody told me that Indian companies to disclose nahi karenge, they are very, you know, they are not going to comply, it's very difficult, and you know, everybody discouraged me to actually get into this. They said that it will be a wasteful proposition for you, you will lose your money. But then something triggered in my mind. I asked myself that if Mr. Steve Jobs would have asked me, do you need an iPhone? I would have said, no, my Nokia is better than whatever you will build. So sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, and you have to believe that, you know, maybe it will work, because the idea's time has come. So, and then we started collecting data. What we have seen is that what people told us all along is actually wrong. Because this data is not captured at one place, it is not found in the annual reports, or this data is not audited. People think that companies are not giving out data at all. 60% of the companies that we collected data, about 560 companies I collected in the first year, and we scrubbed data, 1,045 indicators, several sources. We found that 60% of the companies are disclosing up to 75%. So it's not that they are not doing it. So we sometimes are self-beating ourselves, saying that we don't have data, people are not compliant, other countries are doing it better. I don't think it is necessarily the case. Some industries we are doing better than elsewhere. So I think that will be my humble submission, that we are not really doing that bad.
Right. So it's still an opportunity, even if you bring everything else in. Yogesh, the next devil's advocate question is on greenwashing. I mean, if you're not familiar with the term, it is to sort of oversell, or in many cases just lie about green practices or disclosures which are not accurate in terms of the environmental impact that they're having. Now, you are working with vendors, you're working with a whole constellation of suppliers, and a lot of them would produce a lot of good work that they're doing. How does one get around the fact that, a lot of them may be overstating it, and this could be by design or just by how they've projected the numbers? How does one get around that to make sure that sustainability is actually embedded, but not something just a report, a marketing gimmick, as it were?
Thanks for the question. I think sustainability or ESG, whatever we say, is all about leadership. And when we say leader, it's all about transparency. And leadership is all about visible, and demonstrated. So whenever we come across, we hardly come across actually in terms of greenwashing from our SMEs point of view, but I think that's give a very direct connection that the leadership is not engaged into the ESG stuff. But this also gives us a second thought that what prompted that particular, company to overdo or over communicate that. I think somewhere that question also prompts us a lot, and that's the key actually from where we can work it out that that shouldn't happen again. One interesting thought which was just coming up in addition to his words was, if we talk one thing that what SMEs can do it in terms of going forward on sustainability, I think it's about the harnessing the power of lean and green. So if we are able to harness the power of lean and green, I think we delete all our, the things which is not good for us. Every kind of waste, either is a process waste or a material waste. And lean transcends green actually. So once we are lean for the SMEs, I think then the second step is towards getting into green space. And in that overall scenario, I don't think there will be any kind of greenwashing going to come in.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's about ethos, it's about leadership, transparency, and if you're lean and green, you would need to do all of those things. And a very interesting thought that if you do feel that somebody's greenwashing, do spend some time understanding why they're doing it. There could be some challenges along the way. I wanted to come to you, Naveen. If I am one of your vendors and I come to you and I say, look, the burden of compliance that you're asking me to now do, I just cannot do. I don't have such high turnovers. I don't have that maturity in my organization. I don't have the manpower. I don't have the understanding. What do you do for such suppliers? It'll be very unfair that, we have a system where if you're ESG compliant, you're in. If you're not, you're just booted off. So what would you recommend to such a person who's coming to you with this plea that, look, I may not be compliant today, but give me some time, I'll get on board in the years ahead?
I think good. Thanks for the question. See, it is about hand-holding. It is about educating the supplier partner. And as I said earlier, scope 1, 2 is absolutely must to have.
Again, just for the clarity here, scope 1 is direct emissions, what you're using as, purchased electricity and burning fuels, and scope 3 is your supply chain. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So scope 3 is where I think it is because you have like all the inbound logistics, whatever metal we are bringing and whatever even our final product, the steel part that is going out to our customer partners. So I think it is the hand holding that is required. And second is about, according to us, I think that we promote is about circularity. Circularity is a process where, it comes very handy. Just to give you an example, like we use a lot of refractories in our steel making process. So once refractory has a life, let's say 120, 130 heats, what we call one heat is like 250 tons of steel. So after 120 heats, the refractory set got, we have to discard that. So now we have started a concept of how we can recycle that. So we have a back-to-back contract with our supplier partner that you please take this refractory set back to your premises at a very nominal or minimal cost, and then you recycle. There are sort of material which they can recycle it back, and then again they can use that material again back to the new set. So I think this is one way. Second, they will have the issues in terms of must to have that, yes, sorry, please give us time, please educate us that why, how this difference, how this, can we tailor some, can we go for a product, different product use, can we tailor our product availability, how we can sort of ensure that if you could give us a time or do a hand holding, we will be up to the mark what you are expecting. So I think this is about a collaboration. It is about, because nothing is going to change within a day or within a 1 week or within a month. It is going to take years and years of consistent efforts that we need to put in along with our supplier partners. See, availability and affordability, I think these are the two things which are for Indian companies. I think it was must. Now after these, once we tick off these two boxes of availability and affordability, now comes sustainability, right? So sustainability, it is like a nice to have, and the things which we as an Indian, roti kapda makan ke baad mein, now the thing where, and we from our frugal engineering, but jugaad, what we are talking, we are sustainable by nature, by birth. So I think it is the area, what we are actually focusing right now. And we are pleased to inform you that the kind of knowledge our supplier partners have about this, they want to change. It's like their forefather, they started the business, then their fathers, and now they are coming with a new mindset. And that is where they want to change. They have that energy in them to change. They have the passion to change themselves. And it is our duty as the owner to really handhold with them and try to take them to the platform where we want them to be.
Right, so it's interesting to hear about the process, about this being not time bound, but actually time tested. So we have to give it its own maturity phase. So that's good to know. And that hand holding and partnership is something that we are hearing a lot on. Benita, I'd like to bring you in here. We've heard about opportunity, we've heard about risks, we've heard about challenges, we've heard some good examples that have come out of here, both on what the large corporations are doing, but also what MNCs are doing in the process. I'd like to talk to you about training. I mean, if you're an MSME and you run a HR function, or you're heading an organization, an MSME, how important would training be to get the mindset, to get a culture of sustainability built into or embedded into the organization?
I think training is absolutely critical, because unless and until people are aware, you will not have change really happening. So the first step is always, of course, about training people about why you're actually asking them to follow what you're asking them to do, right? So today, sustainability has moved away from just being the basic things. Now it has come into the processes that you're following in your everyday work. It is coming into how you're hiring people, how you're going to actually treat your people, how you're going to work with the communities around you. Everything comes under the sustainability policy. So unless and until your entire team is actually geared towards that one goal, it's not going to really help. So therefore, for instance, in our organization, what we did was we have something called Horizon Now, which is a 2025 initiative where we are looking at goals which we've set for the entire organization. By 2025, what are the sustainability goals that we want to reach? And it's very clearly defined. So, and then it is actually percolated down to every person in the organization. So if you say training, every person in the organization needs to know what we are actually going after, so that they can also feel the pride of actually having achieved this. So if you're saying 75% of everything that we produce is going to be recyclable or going towards sustainability, in some way or the other, then everybody has to know this. If you're talking about scope 1 and scope 2 emissions being brought down, everybody needs to know what you're actually going after. So each person in the organization should be able to articulate this. And this comes only with training, and this allows each person also to own it and to actually come up with suggestions which will help you to improve and get to your goals faster. So I think this is true for everybody, and I think when it comes to our customers, we do the same thing. We actually, part of all of our pitch itself talks about what we are going after, and therefore we actually educate them about what we are looking for. And many times if the customer has a certain goal themselves, and which most of the customers today do, so if we talk about anyone in the FMCG industry, they all have sustainability goals that they are going after. So we actually sit and work with them to see how we can partner with them to help them to reach their sustainability goals. So I think that's...
Right, so goals, targets, training, embedding the entire program in, very important. We're coming at the end of our time here on this wonderful panel discussion. We could have gone on for another hour, I think, and still not run out of subjects and topics, some that we've just touched the surface of. But I'd like to also leave it open to the audience to ask a few questions. And as you think of those questions, I just do one quick round back with everybody, which should be a little interesting, which is, I'd like to ask you, if you were consulting or somebody was consulting you and, they ran an MSME and they wanted the Panch Amrit, the 5 things that you would tell them on sustainability to build a good sustainability program or why to do it, what would those 5 things be? So I'll start with you, Shankar. 5 things, I am running an MSME, why I should do sustainability or how I should begin.
So first, why you should do it is because you are in India. India is a country of 1.4 billion people. On an average, most of the states have about 500 people per square kilometer. You have states like West Bengal, which has 1,200, 1,300 people per square kilometer. I don't think even Japan has more than 300 people per square kilometer. You have a very long coastline. These coastal areas are also agricultural hubs for India. A lot of people in India depend on agriculture. Now imagine if climate change becomes real, it is real, it is already real, weather is changing, but it has not yet caused a serious havoc in India. If salt water comes into the land will be wasted, people will migrate towards more inside the country. So essentially what we are going to look at is a serious climate problem turning into a social problem.
Migration.
You know, I can go on and I can paint an extremely gloomy picture about what can go wrong about India. We are downside risk professionals. Our job is not to see positive side, we always see the downside, and I can go on and on about it. 5 things what people should do is, first of all, you have to believe that it is possible. It is not always that ESG is going to increase the cost and it's going to be wasteful expenditure and all that. It will ultimately be helpful. Just do those things first where your immediate cost savings will happen, and then you can focus, you know, more and more on. The second thing I would say is that try to disclose as much as possible. You know, and not only disclose, first is measure. You know, what you can only improve things, what you can measure. So please measure, benchmark yourself with your industry, compare yourself with the best players in the industry. So that is the first. Second thing I would say that you disclose. You let people know what you are up to, and that's the only way you will be scrutinized and you will get feedback. I have seen, I am from credit rating industry, and credit rating industry has been blamed for big defaults like, you know, ILFS, DHFL, Morgan Stanley, Lehman Brothers, and so on. And then rating agencies were told to disclose. Personally, it was extremely threatening in the beginning. You know, I have not caused these defaults. I was not associated with these defaults. But as a member of the industry, I also had to start disclosing as whatever the regulators wanted us to do. Today, I am a relieved person because I have disclosed much more, and nothing has really gone wrong after disclosing. So I think these are the 3 things I have said.
Right, okay.
Others can add 2 more.
Great, okay. Yogesh, 5 things, very quickly. You're giving too much time to others to think.
For sure. No, I think the 5 things which comes very straight is, the first thing is integrated strategy. So every SMEC has its own materiality. So if that overall organizational strategy gets integrated with the ESG strategy, so that's the one thing which we can finalize, and that will be very different for different SMEs based on their sectors they are working. Second thing is about the continuous improvement, because that will give a leverage for SMEC in the broader plane. That will differentiate that. That will also give a very beautiful dimension towards innovation. Third thing is about stakeholder engagement. We need to know who are our stakeholders, internal and externals, and get close to them, learn from them, and engage more in that. Fourth thing is about improving processes, how we can improve processes, and that will again give a leverage at a broader space. And what you were sharing about disclosing, I would say it's about helping each other. The fifth one, how one SME can help the other SME as a very integrated approach. That will give a beautiful, world outside. Thank you.
Great. Naveen?
I think 2 things, rest of the things have been already told. So first is, I think it's an amazing opportunity for all of us to prepare ourselves for the next decade. I think the onus is on us, how we can improve our system, processes, and it's the best opportunity where we can start thinking on the life cycle of the product. Because, you know, initially you may feel it is a high cost, but if you see the life cycle of the cost of the product, I think it is minimal. Just to give an example, a 20,000 euro car, right? If one car has got close to 1 ton of steel, if that car will be made from green steel, which has got a carbon intensity of only 500 kgs, the incremental cost which a consumer has to give is only 300 euros in a 20,000 euros car. So it is less than 1%. And same for washing machine. Washing machine, the incremental cost of 600 euro washing machine, it is less than 60 kg. If that washing machine will be made from green steel. So the incremental cost is very less. We have to just embrace. I think if we have to live a better future, we have to start acting now.
Great, great. Rachana, 5 things?
Yeah, the first one I would say, and the most important, is think about impact. If the impact that you're making to you're making to the society or the environment at large. Second, think of it as moving from a push strategy to a pull one. At the end, I think it has to come from within, it has to come from organization, regulators apart, but at some point it has to be out of your own responsibility. The third thing would be collaborate. Fourth would be communicate. The more you communicate, the more collaborators, partners you would get in, because you never know who will partner in. If you don't talk about it, then people don't get to know. And lastly, disclose.
Great. Benita, final word.
For me, I think most of the things which have already been covered are anyway true. But apart from that, I would say that, get everyone engaged in the process. I think the more people are engaged with this and it becomes a way of life, I think that's where the success in the future is going to be. As many of the panelists have already pointed out, this is going to be a matter of our survival. It's not going to be a choice anymore. So the sooner we make it a part of our life, the better it is for the entire organization and for everybody. So that's one part. And the other part, I think, which we haven't spoken enough about is diversity. So I think the entire role of diversity in the whole workplace itself, we need to bring this into everything that we do. And we need to make it a conscious effort, for every person to engage with that and to make it consciously happen, So I think this is another thing that I would bring.
Great. So return on investment of this panel has been very good. You've got 25 good suggestions out there for why we should do this. We're at the end of our time. I think if there are any questions, if you could just raise your hand, we'll probably take one question. Yeah, please go ahead.
This entire discourse, I find two things missing. One, there's not enough focus on driving down consumption. Okay, industry looks at how much is per capita consumption in China, US, Europe, etc. But industry never comes out and tells that how much is ideal consumption for anything, energy, clothing, etc., for a sustainable and happy living. And that is the benchmark that we should be moving towards. So I see consumption in the discourse of sustainability missing. The second part, which I often find missing, is that we are not very transparent about cost of disposal in our accounting. So we create a product and we do not declare that, what is the cost of disposal of that product. There may be a garment of 500 rupees, but it may cost 800 rupees to actually dispose that garment because it may be made of plastic, etc., etc. Okay, so unless we include these two aspects, consumption and cost of disposal, so I would really want industry's panel's response to this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question. I won't have time to go all around, but if you see both of those, and we've not had time to go into every issue around sustainability, but on both those issues, if you see the new BRSR core, it in fact talks about both of them. One is the consumption from an industry's perspective. It cannot really be prescriptive that a person should only use 2 bars of soap a month or whatever, but it looks at its own consumption patterns and it wants a trend. It wants a clear trend line from 2020, 21, and so on and so forth. So it wants to see how you're reducing your intensity on 2 counts. One, on the revenue earned and also on the product sold, or in other case, the consumer serviced. So the intensity of consumption within industry is also now becoming part of this. And second, in terms of waste, there's very clear disclosures on how much it's going to landfill, how much is being incinerated, how much is being recycled. So that conversation is starting, and I think what you would have heard from the panel is it's a movement, and we're on that journey, and those 2 points are incredibly important, and I couldn't agree with you more, but we are making slow steps toward it.